My name is Sharon. I'm 28 years old, and 3 months ago my world fell apart when my husband David died from a sudden stroke. We had been married for 9 years, building a life together in Miami, in a house we poured everything into. I was still picking up the pieces, barely able to get through the day when I dragged myself to my nephew Ethan's first birthday party. That's when my sister Amy dropped a bomb that changed everything. She stood there in front of everyone and announced that Ethan was David's son, waving around a will that supposedly gave her half of our $800,000 house. What she didn't know was why her lie was about to unravel in ways she never saw coming. If you're watching this from somewhere where family drama hits close to home, take a moment to subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. You're going to want to hear how this played out. David and I met 10 years ago at a charity gala in downtown Miami. It was one of those glitzy events, all sparkling lights and overpriced cocktails, raising money for kids with leukemia. I was helping run the event, making sure the silent auction went smoothly, when David bid way too much on a sculpture I'd been eyeing all night, a sleek, modern piece with sharp angles and deep blues that reminded me of the ocean. When he won, he walked right over and handed it to me. "I saw you staring at this," he said, his grin easy and warm. "It's yours." That was David, kind, thoughtful, always noticing the little things. We clicked instantly, like we'd known each other forever. He was a corporate lawyer, sharp but never arrogant, the kind of guy who tipped generously and actually listened when people talked. 6 months later, he proposed on a yacht off South Beach, the Miami skyline glowing behind us. We bought our house a year after the wedding, a modern place in Coconut Grove, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a pool out back. It cost $800,000 more than we could comfortably afford, but David had just landed a big promotion, and my interior design business was taking off. The house was our dream, a place we thought we'd raise a family in, but kids never happened. We tried for years: doctor visits, fertility treatments, 3 rounds of IVF that ate through our savings and left us raw. The last attempt was the worst. I still remember driving home from the clinic, neither of us saying a word, David just squeezing my hand. "We're enough," he told me that night, sitting by the pool. "You and me, Sharon. We've got this." And he meant it. We rebuilt our plans, focusing on work travel, fixing up the house until it was perfect, a showcase for my designs. Amy, my older sister, was always on the edges of our life. She's 32, 4 years older than me, and she's been the wild one since we were kids. While I was grinding through design school and building my business, Amy bounced from job to job, relationship to relationship, always chasing something better. Our parents, Brian and Linda, worried about her constantly, which meant they were always cleaning up her messes, paying her rent, covering her debts. Amy and I never really got along. She's gorgeous with this magnetic charm that pulls people in, but she's always had this need to outdo me. If I got something, she wanted something bigger. When David and I got engaged, she started dating a string of lawyers. When we bought our house, she went on and on about her cramped apartment until our parents helped her move to a better one. It was draining, but David always pushed me to keep her in my life. "She's your sister Sharon," he'd say. "Family matters." 3 years ago, Amy started seeing Harold, a real estate agent with a flashy smile and a Rolex he couldn't afford. Their relationship was a roller coaster, screaming fights, dramatic breakups, then making up like nothing happened. Then, out of nowhere at a family barbecue, Amy announced she was pregnant. It hit me hard. After all our struggles, all the heartbreak of failed treatments, Amy, who never even wanted kids, got pregnant by accident. She'd always mocked my dream of being a mom, saying it was just following the herd. But there she was, acting like it was the greatest thing that ever happened to her. I swallowed my jealousy and decided to be the best aunt I could. Ethan was born healthy, 7 pounds 9 ounces. I showed up at the hospital with a stuffed turtle and a quilt I'd spent weeks making. Amy seemed overwhelmed from day one, calling me constantly about Ethan's crying or how tired she was. I stepped up watching him when she needed a break sometimes, keeping him overnight so she could rest. David wasn't as involved with Ethan as I was. I figured it was too hard for him seeing a baby that wasn't ours after everything we'd been through. He was polite when Amy brought Ethan over, but he kept his distance, and I didn't push him. Then came the day everything changed. It was a Thursday morning, and David woke up feeling off, complaining about a headache. I told him to stay home, but he had a big case at work. Just a stress headache, he said, kissing me before he left. I'll call you later. That call never came. Instead, I got one from the hospital. Stroke, they said. Massive. Nothing they could do. He was 34, gone before I could even say goodbye. The days after were a fog. I planned the funeral, picked out a casket, answered calls from people offering condolences I didn't want to hear. Amy barely showed up. She sent a few texts saying Ethan was sick or she couldn't find a sitter. At the funeral, she stayed for 10 minutes, hugged me awkwardly, and left before anyone could talk to her. I was too broken to care. A week later, Ethan's first birthday rolled around. I didn't want to go to some loud kids' party, not when I could barely get out of bed, but my mom Linda kept pushing. David would want you to be there, she said over the phone. He always said family comes first. So I dragged myself to Amy's rented condo in a rundown part of Miami, a wrapped gift for Ethan in the passenger seat, my eyes burning from lack of sleep. I parked outside behind a row of cars and forced myself to walk inside. Amy's friend Nicole opened the door, her face tightening when she saw me. "Sharon, you're here," she said, her voice weirdly tense. "Everyone's out back." The condo was decked out with green balloons and a happy first birthday Ethan banner stretched across the wall. I noticed a group of strangers in the kitchen, their voices dropping as I walked by, their eyes on me. Out in the backyard, people stood around with drinks, talking in hushed groups. My parents were at a folding table looking out of place. Brian stood up when he saw me, pulling me into a hug. "We didn't know if you'd come," he said. "Where's Ethan?" I asked. Setting the gift on a table piled with presents. With Amy, Linda said, avoiding my gaze. "They'll be out soon." I moved through the crowd, nodding at condolences, dodging questions about how I was doing. Everyone seemed nervous, conversation stopping when I got close. I figured they just didn't know how to talk to someone who'd just lost their husband. After about 20 minutes, Amy came out holding Ethan on her hip. She was dressed up, her hair freshly done, a new dress hugging her figure. Ethan looked cute in a tiny polo shirt, his chubby hands waving at the crowd. Amy barely glanced at me as she set him in his high chair. She was buzzing with energy, moving around like she was putting on a show, smiling too big for a kid's birthday party. Then she tapped her glass with a spoon, calling for attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Ethan's big day," she said, her voice loud and clear. "This year has been full of ups and downs, and I've been holding on to something big that I need to share, especially now." I felt a knot in my stomach. Something was off. She put her hand on Ethan's head, looking right at me. "Ethan isn't Harold's son," she said. "He's David's." The words hit like a punch. People gasped. My dad froze next to me, but all I could hear was a ringing in my ears. "David and I had an affair 2 years ago." Amy went on, her voice steady like she'd practiced this. "It was a mistake. But it happened. Ethan is his son." I stood there, unable to move, as she pulled a folded paper from her purse. David knew the truth. Before he died, he changed his will to make sure Ethan was taken care of. This says half the house he and Sharon owned, worth $800,000, goes to Ethan, his biological son. Every head turned to me. I saw pity, shock, curiosity in their faces. My parents looked like they'd been slapped. Brian started to stand, then sat back down, unsure. And then, despite the pain, I felt a laugh bubbling up inside me, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous. I bit it back, keeping my face blank. "Can I see that will, Amy?" I asked, my voice steady. She looked thrown, like she expected me to scream or cry. She walked over, handed me the paper, and I skimmed it. The words were wrong, the signature off. Nothing like David's neat, precise handwriting. I folded it carefully and handed it back. "Thanks for showing me," I said. "I need to go now." Amy blinked. "That's it. You're not going to say anything, not here," I replied, grabbing my purse. "This is Ethan's day. We'll talk later." I said goodbye to my parents, promising to call, and walked out as the party fell apart behind me, whispers following me to my car. Once I got to my car after Ethan's birthday party, I sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel, trying to wrap my head around what Amy had just done. My sister, my own flesh and blood, stood in front of everyone and claimed her son was David's, waving some fake-looking will to steal half of the house we'd worked so hard for. $800,000 split down the middle just because she decided to lie about my husband. The worst part, she thought I'd just take it, that I'd crumble under the weight of losing David and let her walk all over me. She was wrong. I wasn't going to let her tarnish David's memory or take what was ours. I started the car and drove home, already planning my next move. Amy had no idea what she'd started, but I was about to shut it down. Driving back to Coconut Grove, I kept thinking about that will she'd shown me. It didn't look right. David was a lawyer, meticulous about every document he touched. The signature she'd waved around was close to his, but the loops were off the slant, too sharp. I'd seen his handwriting on 1,000 contracts, love notes, grocery lists. There was no way that was his. And her story about an affair. It didn't add up. David was loyal, the kind of man who'd rather die than betray me. But there was something else. Something Amy didn't know. Something David and I had kept private for years. It was the reason her claim about Ethan was not just a lie, but impossible. I wasn't ready to tip my hand yet, but I knew I needed proof to bury her story for good. When I got home, I went straight to the safe in our bedroom closet. David had always been prepared, almost to a fault. "You never know when you'll need a paper trail," he'd say, half joking, whenever we filed away important documents. Inside the safe was a box we'd called our emergency kit: legal papers, medical records, things we'd hoped we'd never need. I pulled it out and sat on the floor, flipping through the contents. There it was, David's real will, notarized, signed by 2 witnesses from his firm, leaving everything to me. No mention of Ethan, no mention of Amy. Next to it were medical records from 3 years ago detailing a surgery that changed everything. I set those aside, knowing they'd be my trump card. The truth about Amy started years before Ethan was born, back when she was still trying to one-up me at every turn. It was 4 years ago at a dinner we hosted at our house to celebrate Amy landing a job at an advertising agency, her first steady gig in ages. David had cooked his famous grilled mahi-mahi, and we'd opened a bottle of wine, laughing over old family stories. I got pulled away for a work call, a client freaking out about a delayed furniture delivery. It took longer than I expected, maybe 15 minutes, and when I came back, the vibe in the room had shifted. David was quiet, staring at his plate, while Amy was leaning too close to him, giggling about something I hadn't heard. I brushed it off. Amy was always flirty after a few drinks, and I didn't want to make a scene. Later that night, as we were cleaning up, David looked uneasy. "Sharon, I need to tell you something," he said, sitting on the couch, his voice low. "And I don't want this to mess things up with you and Amy, but I can't keep it from you." He told me that while I was on the phone, Amy had gotten too comfortable, made comments about how I didn't deserve a guy like him, hinted that she could make him happier. When he shut her down, she played it off like a joke, saying he was too serious. I was pissed, but not shocked. Amy had always pushed boundaries, especially when she thought she could get away with it. We decided to let it slide, chalking it up to her being tipsy and her usual need to compete. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few months, Amy kept crossing lines. She'd touch David's arm when I wasn't looking, send him texts that were just shy of inappropriate, like asking him to meet for coffee to catch up. Once she showed up at his office downtown, claiming she was in the area and wanted to grab lunch. David told me every time, never hiding anything. After the office stunt, we sat down with my parents, Brian and Linda, to talk about it. It was a disaster. They defended Amy, saying she was just being friendly, that David was reading too much into it. Linda even suggested he might be flattered by the attention and blowing it out of proportion. I was furious, but David stayed calm. "Let's just keep our distance," he said later that night. "We don't need the drama." So we did. We stopped inviting Amy to our house, made sure we were never alone with her, and David blocked her number after she sent a late-night text that went too far. Then came the medical issue that sealed everything. 3 years ago, David started having pain bad enough that he finally saw a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, a condition that needed surgery. The procedure went fine, but the doctor found complications that made things trickier. They recommended a vasectomy during the surgery to prevent future issues. It was a gut punch, especially after all our fertility struggles, but we agreed it was best for his health. The vasectomy happened 3 years before Ethan was conceived. We didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. After years of people asking why we didn't have kids, we'd learned to keep our medical business private. Only David, me, and his doctor knew. A month after the surgery, as he was recovering, David got serious one night. "Amy's not going to stop," he said, sitting by the pool with a glass of water. "She's got it in her head she can push me, and I don't trust her to let it go." I thought he was overreacting, but he wasn't taking chances. The next week, he set up a meeting with our lawyer, Robert Carter. I went with him, listening as David laid out Amy's behavior, the comments, the texts, the office visit. Robert suggested keeping a record of everything just in case. "You never know when you'll need to prove something," he said. So we did. David started a journal noting every weird interaction with Amy, saving her texts, even documenting dates and times. We filed it all away, along with his medical records and the real will, in our safe. The morning after Ethan's party, I called Robert. He'd been David's mentor at the firm, a guy in his 50s with a no-nonsense attitude and a knack for cutting through bullshit. "Sharon, I'm so sorry about David," he said when I got him on the phone. "What's going on?" I told him about Amy's stunt at the party, the fake will her claim about Ethan. "I need your help," I said. "This isn't just a lie, it's fraud. I want to know what I'm dealing with." Robert didn't hesitate. "Bring everything you have to my office this afternoon. We'll figure out the next steps." I grabbed the documents from the safe. The real will, the medical records, David's journal, and drove to Robert's office in Brickell, a sleek building with glass walls and a view of the bay. He was waiting for me, his desk covered with case files. "Let's see, this will Amy's talking about," he said. I handed him a copy I'd snapped with my phone at the party. He studied it for a minute, frowning. "This is garbage," he said flatly. "The language is all wrong for a legal document and the signature's a mess. It wouldn't hold up in court for 5 seconds. I showed him the real will, the medical records proving David's vasectomy, and the journal detailing Amy's behavior. Robert leaned back, flipping through the pages. "David was smart to keep this," he said. "The vasectomy alone kills her claim about Ethan. It's dated 3 years before the kid was born. No way David's the father." "What do I do now?" I asked. "I can't let her get away with this, Robert. She's trying to take half my house, smear David's name, all while I'm still grieving." He tapped his pen on the desk, thinking. "We need more on Amy's motives. People don't pull stunts like this without a reason, usually money. I know a guy, Tom Hayes, a private investigator who's worked with the firm before. He's good at digging up dirt. You okay with me bringing him in?" I nodded. "Do it. I want to know everything." Robert called Tom right then, filling him in while I sat there, the weight of it all settling in. Tom showed up an hour later, a burly guy with a thick Miami accent and a notepad already in hand. "Tell me about Amy," he said, sitting across from me. I laid it all out, her history of jumping from job to job, her rocky relationship with Harold, her sudden pregnancy, her desperation since Ethan was born. "She's always been jealous," I said. "Always trying to take what I have. But this is a new low." Tom scribbled notes asking about Harold, Amy's finances, anything I knew about her life. I realized I didn't know much. We'd drifted apart since Ethan came along, her calls for help slowing down as I got busier with my grief. I'll start with her financials, and Harold, Tom said, standing up. Give me a couple of days. I'll find out what's driving her. I left Robert's office feeling lighter, like I was finally taking control. Amy thought she could blindside me, but she didn't know I had David's foresight on my side. Whatever she was hiding, I was going to find it. And when I did, she'd regret ever thinking she could play me like this. 2 days after meeting with Robert and Tom, I got a call from Tom Hayes. "Sharon, I've got something for you," he said, his voice clipped and serious. "Can you come to Robert's office this afternoon? You're gonna want to see this." I didn't ask questions. I grabbed my keys, drove straight to Brickell, and walked into Robert Carter's office, where both men were waiting. Papers were spread across the conference table, and Tom had a laptop open, his face grim. I sat down, ready to hear whatever they'd found, knowing it was going to be bad. Amy had crossed a line, and I was done playing nice. I wanted the truth, and I wanted it now. Tom didn't waste time. "Your sister's in deep trouble," he said, sliding a stack of documents toward me. "Financially, she's drowning. Amy's got over $80,000 in debt, credit cards, personal loans, medical bills for Ethan's heart surgery from when he was born. Her credit score's in the toilet, and she's been denied 4 loans in the last 6 weeks." He pointed to a printed notice. "This is an eviction warning from her landlord. She's 3 months behind on rent, owes $9,000, and has until the end of the month to pay up or get out." I stared at the numbers, the reality of Amy's desperation sinking in. I'd known she was bad with money, but this was worse than I'd imagined. "There's more," Tom said, pulling up screenshots on his laptop. "These are texts between Amy and her friend Nicole, the one who greeted you at the party." I leaned in, reading the messages. They were brutal. "David's gone and Sharon's a mess," Amy had written. "This is my shot. That house is worth $800,000. If I pull this off, Ethan and I are set." Another text sent a week before the party: "Harold's buddy helped me with the will. Found David's signature on some old legal filing online. It's close enough to pass." I felt sick, not just at the words, but at how calculated it all was. Amy wasn't just desperate, she'd planned this, banking on my grief to make me an easy target. "Harold's involved?" I asked, my voice tight. Tom nodded. "Not directly, but he's not innocent. Harold's a real estate agent, right? He's been struggling too. Lost his license 6 months ago after some shady deals, and he's been leaning on Amy to cover their bills. From what I can tell, he knew about the fake will and didn't stop her. Probably encouraged it." Tom flipped to another page, a background check on Harold. "He's got a history, fined twice for falsifying property records, and there's a domestic violence complaint from an ex-girlfriend 5 years ago, though it was dropped. He's not exactly father of the year. Oh, and he's not even Ethan's dad. He bailed on Amy right after she got pregnant, moved to Tampa with some new woman. Amy's been raising Ethan alone, scraping by on waitressing gigs." I sat back, processing it all. Amy had lied about everything: Ethan's paternity, the affair, the will. And Harold, who I'd barely met, was part of her scheme, or at least okay with it. My parents had never liked him, always saying he was trouble, but Amy had brushed them off, calling them judgmental. Now I saw why. "What else?" I asked, looking at Tom. He hesitated, then handed me another document. "This is the kicker," he said. "Amy's been telling people for weeks she's getting a big payout from you. She bragged to Nicole about finally getting what she deserves after years of you having it all. Her words, not mine." I read the texts again, Amy's voice clear in every line. "Sharon's always been the favorite," she wrote. "Perfect job, perfect house, perfect husband. Now he's gone and I'm the one with nothing. Time to even things out." It wasn't just about money, it was personal. Amy had always resented me, always thought I had it easier. She didn't care that I'd worked my ass off for everything that David and I had fought through, years of infertility, that his death had gutted me. She saw my life and wanted a piece of it, no matter who she hurt. Robert spoke up, his voice calm but firm. Sharon, this is enough to nail her. Forging a will is a felony in Florida. With the evidence, we have the fake document, the texts, her financial records, you could press charges. She'd be looking at up to 7 years if convicted, plus fines. The medical records alone prove David couldn't be Ethan's father. He tapped the folder with David's vasectomy records. This is airtight. No court would buy her story. What about Ethan, I asked. He's just a kid. If Amy goes to jail, what happens to him? Robert leaned forward. That's the tough part. If you go the legal route, Ethan could end up in foster care unless your parents step in. Or Harold, if he suddenly decides to play dad, which seems unlikely based on Tom's report. I thought about Ethan, his chubby cheeks and big eyes, completely innocent in all this. I loved that kid even after everything Amy had done. The idea of him being caught in the fallout made my stomach twist. I looked at Tom. Did you find anything else on Amy? Anything that explains why she thought she could pull this off? He nodded, pulling out another sheet. She's been talking to a guy named Derek, some low-rent graphic designer who helped her with the fake will. He's got a record petty theft fraud, nothing major, but he's not careful. Left a digital trail a mile wide. I traced the document to his computer. He used a template from a shady legal site and slapped David's signature on it. Amateur stuff. Tom smirked. Amy thought she was clever, but she's not exactly a mastermind. I sat there, the folder of evidence in front of me, feeling a mix of anger and clarity. Amy had planned this for weeks, maybe longer, thinking she could cash in on my pain. She didn't care about David's memory or what her lies would do to me. She didn't even care about Ethan, not really, just saw him as a way to get what she wanted. I thought about confronting her, laying out every piece of evidence, watching her squirm. But I also knew Amy. She'd cry, make excuses, try to spin it like she was the victim. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. Robert, what's my best move? I asked. He adjusted his glasses, thinking. You've got 2 paths. 1, we go hard, file charges, take her to court, let the system handle it. It's clean, and she'll face real consequences. 2, you confront her privately. Show her the evidence and demand she back off. But with someone like Amy, that might not work. She's desperate, and desperate people don't always think straight. He paused. If you go private, you need to be ready for her to double down. Either way, you've got the upper hand with this. He gestured to the documents. I nodded, my mind racing. Going to court felt right. Amy deserved to face the law for what she'd done. But I kept thinking about Ethan, about my parents, about the mess it would make. Brian and Linda would probably take Amy's side like they always did, begging me to keep the family together. I wasn't sure I could handle that, not after losing David. Still, I wasn't going to let Amy walk away scot-free. She'd tried to destroy my life, and I was going to make sure she paid for it. I want to talk to her first, I said finally. Not to negotiate, but to let her know I've got everything, her texts, her debts, the fake will. I want her to admit it to my face before I decide what's next. Robert raised an eyebrow. You sure she's not likely to come clean without a fight? I nodded. I'm sure. I need to hear it from her. After that, I'll decide if we go to court. Tom chimed in. If you're meeting her, record it. Florida's a 2-party consent state, so tell her up front you're recording. Frame it as protecting both of you. I'll get you a small device, easy to use. I agreed, and Robert promised to prep a legal notice to back me up just in case. I left the office with the folder of evidence, my resolve hardening. Amy thought she could outsmart me, but she'd underestimated me and David. He'd left me everything I needed to fight back: his journal, his medical records, his real will. I wasn't just fighting for our house or his memory. I was fighting for myself, for the life we'd built, for the truth. Amy had no idea what was coming, but she was about to find out. The day after meeting with Tom and Robert, I called Amy. I kept my voice steady, like I was just checking in. We need to talk about the will, I said when she picked up. Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon? Just you know, Ethan. There was a pause, then she answered, sounding smug. I knew you'd come to your senses, Sharon. I'll be there at 3. I hung up already, setting up for what was coming. I wasn't going to let Amy twist this around or play the victim. She'd tried to ruin me, and I was ready to end her game for good. I spent the morning getting everything in order. I laid out the documents on the coffee table in my living room, the real will, David's medical records, his journal, Tom's investigation report, the printed texts between Amy and Nicole. Robert had sent me a small recording device per Tom's advice, and I tested it to make sure it worked. Florida's two-party consent law meant I had to tell Amy we were recording, but I'd frame it as a way to keep things clear. I arranged 2 chairs facing each other, the table between them, and waited. This wasn't about negotiation. It was about making Amy face what she'd done and shutting her down for good. Right at 3, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Amy standing there, dressed like she was going to a brunch, all confidence and polished nails. "Hey, Sharon," she said, stepping inside like nothing was wrong. "Let's make this quick. Ethan's with a sitter." I led her to the living room and gestured to a chair. "Sit. I want to record our conversation just to make sure we're both clear on what's said. You okay with that?" She shrugged, barely glancing at the device. "Sure, whatever. Let's get to the point." I turned on the recorder, stating the date and time, confirming her consent, then sat down across from her. "Before we talk about the will," I said, keeping my voice even, "I want to hear your side. What exactly are you saying happened between you and David?" Amy launched into her story, smooth as if she'd rehearsed it 100 times. She claimed she and David had an affair 2 years ago during a rough patch in my marriage, one that never existed. She said they'd met at a hotel in South Beach, that David had told her he wasn't happy that Ethan was conceived during one of those meetings. He felt guilty, she said, her eyes wide with fake sincerity. But he promised to take care of his son. That's why he changed the will. I let her talk, not interrupting, just watching her spin her lies. Her story was full of holes, dates that didn't match David's schedule, details about him that were just wrong. When she finished, I leaned forward. "Which hotel in South Beach?" I asked. She answered fast. "The Delano." "What floor?" I pressed. She hesitated. "I don't know, one of the upper ones." "What days did you meet?" "What did David order from room service?" "Did he leave his shoes by the door or the bed?" Her answers got vaguer, her confidence slipping. "Why are you grilling me?" she snapped. "The will says it all. Ethan's his kid." "Actually," I said, opening the folder on the table, "the will says nothing because it's fake." I slid David's medical records across to her. 3 years before Ethan was born, David had a vasectomy after a surgery for a varicocele. It was successful, confirmed by tests. He couldn't have kids. Ethan's not his. Amy stared at the papers, her face going pale, but she didn't pick them up. "Those could be forged," she said, her voice weak. "They're not," I replied. "David's doctor will testify if I need him to." But that's just the start. I pulled out the real will, notarized and signed by 2 partners at David's firm. This is David's actual will. It leaves everything to me. No mention of you or Ethan. "Your document's a fraud, Amy. The signature's wrong. The language is off." Robert Carter already confirmed it wouldn't hold up in court. Forging a will's a felony in Florida, up to 7 years in prison. I kept going, laying out the rest, David's journal documenting her inappropriate behavior years ago, the texts with Nicole where she bragged about scamming me, Tom's report on her $80,000 in debt, the eviction notice, Harold's shady past. "I know everything," I said, watching her shrink in her chair. "The question is, what now?" Amy didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, she started crying, real tears, not the fake ones she'd used on our parents for years. "I was desperate, Sharon," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm going to lose my place. Ethan's medical bills are piling up. Harold's gone, left me with nothing." I didn't know what else to do. I felt a flash of anger. "So you decided to lie about my husband, to say he cheated on me, to drag his name through the mud, to try to take half our house." She wiped her eyes, her tone shifting to defiance. "You've got everything, Sharon. This big house, your fancy business, everyone thinking you're perfect. I've got a kid with a heart problem and no way to pay for it. You wouldn't understand. That's not an excuse, I shot back. You planned this. You got Derek to fake the will, use David's signature from some old document. You thought I'd just hand over $400,000 because I was grieving. Amy looked away, then back at me, her jaw tight. I didn't think you'd dig this deep. I figured you'd settle to avoid the drama. I laughed sharp and bitter. You figured wrong. David was loyal. He never touched you. You admitted it years ago when he shut you down. Ethan's Harold's, isn't he? She nodded barely. Yeah. David wouldn't even look at me that way. Too damn perfect for you. I turned off the recorder, leaning forward so she couldn't look away. You're going to tell everyone the truth, I said. That you lied about the affair, about Ethan, about the will. You'll admit it to Mom and Dad, to Nicole, to everyone at that party. And you're going to do it soon. Amy's eyes narrowed. Or what, you'll call the cops? Ruin my life. You did that yourself, I said. I could press charges and you'd lose everything, Ethan included. Or you can come clean, and maybe I won't. But don't think for a second I'm helping you. Not after this. She stood up, grabbing her purse. You're really going to throw your own sister under the bus for what? A house? David's dead, Sharon. He doesn't care. I stood too, my voice cold. This isn't about the house. It's about you thinking you could use my pain to scam me. You don't get to walk away clean. Tell the truth, or I'll let the courts handle it. Amy glared at me, then stormed out, slamming the door. I sat back down, the folder of evidence still open in front of me. There was no going back now. Amy wasn't sorry, she was just mad she got caught. And I was done with her. I called Robert that evening, telling him what happened. She admitted it, I said. On tape. But she's not backing down easy. He sighed. I figured. People like Amy don't go quietly. You still want to give her a chance to confess publicly? Or do we move forward with charges? I thought about Ethan, about my parents, about the family drama that would explode either way. Give her a week, I said. If she doesn't come clean, we file. I'm not letting her drag this out. Robert agreed, promising to draft a legal notice to put pressure on her. As I hung up, I felt a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. Amy had been a shadow in my life for years, always competing, always taking. David had seen it, warned me about her, and now his preparation was my shield. I wasn't going to forgive her, not for Ethan, not for family, not for anything. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. Whatever happened next, I was ready to fight. A week after confronting Amy, I waited for her to do what I'd demanded, tell the truth to everyone about her lies, the fake will and Ethan's paternity. I gave her 7 days to come clean, hoping she'd at least have the decency to own up to her family and friends. She didn't. Instead, I got a text from her the night before the deadline. I'm not doing your little public confession, Sharon. You want to play hardball. Go ahead. I've got nothing left to lose. That was it. No apology, no regret, just defiance. I wasn't surprised, but it hurt all the same. Amy had chosen her path, and now I had to choose mine. I wasn't going to let her drag me down any longer. I called Robert Carter the next morning. She's not budging, I told him. I want to move forward with charges. He didn't hesitate. I'll get the paperwork ready. With the evidence we have, the forged will, the text is your recording of her admission, it's a slam dunk. Amy's looking at felony fraud, maybe 3 to 7 years if convicted. I thought about Ethan, about what this would mean for him. He was just a kid, caught in his mother's mess. My parents, Brian and Linda, would probably try to take him in, but I wasn't sure they could handle it. They'd spent years enabling Amy, and I didn't trust them to set boundaries now. Still, I couldn't let that stop me. Amy had tried to steal half my house, $800,000, and smear David's name. She didn't get to walk away. Robert filed the complaint that week, and the process moved fast. Amy was served papers, and within days she was calling me furious. "You're really doing this?" she yelled over the phone. "You're going to put me in jail over a house?" "What kind of sister are you?" I didn't yell back. The kind who's done with your lies, I said. You had your chance to make this right. You chose not to. She hung up, and that was the last I heard from her directly. My parents predictably got involved. Linda called me, her voice thick with tears. Sharon, please think about Ethan. Amy made a mistake. But jail? Can't you work this out? I cut her off. Her mistake was trying to scam me while I was grieving my husband. I'm done cleaning up her messes, Mom. You and Dad need to stop too. Brian tried next, more reasonable but still pleading. We're family, Sharon. There's got to be another way. I didn't budge. Family doesn't do this to each other. She crossed a line, and I'm not letting it go. The legal process wasn't easy. Amy hired a cheap lawyer who tried to argue the will was a misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. David's medical records proved he couldn't be Ethan's father. The forged will fell apart under scrutiny, and Amy's recorded admission sealed her fate. 3 months later, she pleaded guilty to fraud to avoid a trial. The judge sentenced her to 2 years in prison with 3 years of probation after. Ethan went to live with my parents, who struggled to balance their guilt over Amy with raising a toddler. I didn't visit, didn't call. I loved Ethan, but I couldn't be around my parents, not after they'd tried to guilt me into letting Amy off. The distance hurt, but it was necessary. With Amy out of my life, I focused on rebuilding. My interior design business had taken a hit after David's death. I'd been too lost to take on new clients. But now I threw myself into it, landing a contract to redesign a boutique hotel in South Beach. The work kept me busy, gave me purpose. I started the David Miller Foundation, a scholarship program for kids from low-income families who wanted to study law, honoring David's passion for helping others. Seeing the first recipients get their awards, their faces lit up with hope, made me feel like he was still with me in a way. Friends stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. My college friend Jessica started flying in from Atlanta every few weeks, crashing on my couch and dragging me out for tacos or late-night drives along Ocean Drive. David's old law partner Mark checked in regularly, inviting me to firm events so I wouldn't feel alone. Then there was Nathan, a nonprofit director I met at a foundation fundraiser 6 months after David died. He was quiet, thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. We started as friends, grabbing coffee to discuss the foundation, then moved to dinners, long talks about life and loss. He knew about David, respected that I'd always carry him with me. It wasn't the same as what I had with David, it shouldn't be, but it was something new, something hopeful. A year after David's death, I stood in my backyard looking at the pool where we'd spent so many nights talking about our future. I wasn't the same person I'd been before he died, before Amy's betrayal. I'd learned hard lessons about family, about trust, about standing up for myself. Amy had thought she could break me, use my grief to take what wasn't hers. But David had prepared me even from beyond. His journal, his medical records, his real will. They weren't just documents. They were his way of protecting me, even when he was gone. I'd faced Amy, fought her in court, and come out stronger. I thought about my parents still struggling with Ethan, still calling me, occasionally hoping I'd come around. I didn't. I couldn't. They'd chosen Amy's side too many times, and I was done pretending we could go back to how things were. Ethan was the hardest part. I missed him, his goofy smile, the way he'd grab my finger when I held him. But staying in his life meant staying in Amy's, and I wasn't willing to do that. Maybe one day when he was older, I could reach out, be the aunt he deserved. For now, I had to protect myself. The grief group I'd joined after David died became my lifeline. 12 people all dealing with loss became my family in a way my real one couldn't. We met every week, sharing stories, laughing, crying, celebrating small wins. They got me through the darkest days, reminded me I wasn't alone. My business grew, the foundation thrived, and Nathan and I kept moving forward, one careful step at a time. I wasn't replacing David, no one could. But I was learning to carry his love while building something new. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through something like this, it's to protect yourself. Get the proof, set the boundaries, and don't let guilt make you soft. The people who hurt you, even if they're family, don't get a free pass. David taught me that not just in life, but in the way he prepared for the worst. His love, his foresight gave me the strength to fight back. Amy's betrayal could have broken me, but it didn't. It made me see who I am, what I'm capable of. If you've ever had to cut ties with family or fight to protect what's yours, drop a comment below. Let me know how you got through it. And if this story hit home, don't forget to like and subscribe. Healing's a long road, but it's one you can walk.